my perspective is I'm not affiliated with government or the MI. So my perspective is one institute that is committed to the peace process. So and our mandate was, since I organized IAG in 2001, was to track the peace process and look at autonomy and good governance as a solution, effective to address the quest for self-determination of the Moro people. For the process with the GPH MILF, okay, so I think we can agree that under President Aquino, the common notion, and I think it's true that that this conflict with the MI is ripe for resolution. The ingredients are there. One is you have a president that is popular, very committed to the peace process. The economic situation of the country has stabilized. We have lessons of past peace processes. There's huge international support, in terms of lessons, in terms of material and experiences, how to do the peace process, etc. So I think that's why under Pinoy we talk about this bullet train, it's like a bullet train. But the problem with that bullet train, I think, is that the railways are still the same. It's old, weak. So we're doing this peace process with a very popular president, but with the same political framework and legal framework. Okay? And of course, without any, because the position of government since the very beginning was that this can be accommodated in the 1980s in the current constitution, so which means that there will be no changes in the constitution, but we'll try to make this work within the parameters of the constitution. So that's I think the context of this peace process. I'm not criticizing it, So it was a great opportunity, so we grabbed that opportunity. In a sense, we took a gamble. That's a risk, So it's good that there's always you really need you call it a guarantor for a process, a guarantor, and that was the president. So we anchored this on the president's popularity, president's commitment to to maybe devote his political capital to this process. That's okay, right? And it's just that the problem is that I think there was really a delay in terms of transitioning from the negotiations to making it a public peace process. Okay, where people can really try to understand what is happening, So, and because there's a limitation there, it's a very limited 6 years, right? So we need to really do as much as we can and achieve as much as we can within the 6-year period. So at least for the political and the legal track. And you know how difficult that is, doing political reforms. And I was looking at the record of this administration in terms of political reform. I really haven't seen any. Wala, no? So kay GMA, mabuti pa, meron si GMA na Well, I think this automated, So that's a kind of a reform. No? So, but here, wala pa, So, but the point I'm making here is that, we fast track, okay, the peace process, and one of the main components, which I'll talk about the other component later, would be the political and the legal framework. So, but we are doing that in the context of the current system that we have, where it seems that reforms and changes, I mean, in terms of framework, are hard to come by. Okay, So that's why when Mamasapano happened, okay, so of course it's perception, So whether we like it or not, it's perception, So the perception is that well, the president is the main patron of this, is the main driver, is the guarantor of this. Actually, we say that, okay, if you listen to what the legislators say before Mamasapano and after Mamasapano, it's very revealing, Before Mamasapano, when they're looking at all this BBL and all that, even Congressman Celso Robregat, says that, this is going to happen, the president is, this is the president. The president is popular, the president will push this, it's okay, he guarantees this. Okay, so people, don't have to go, especially for those outside of Mindanao. For them outside of Mindanao, whatever the president trusts and the president commits to this process, we support the president. And whatever, the legislators from Mindanao say about this, so they're directly affected, we will support it. Okay? And then Mamasapano happens. So when we talk about erosion of trust, okay, erosion of trust as a result of Mamasapano, I was doing this reflection with the sisters in Ateneo. The question that I asked them, was there trust, actually trust, before Mamasapano? Okay. Or was it trust on the president? Okay. Was there really real understanding of the roadmap? Okay. Public. No, real public, you cannot expect too much, right? But at least they know what the roadmap looks like and why, the history of the Bangsamoro, etc. Okay, and so the point I'm making here is the whole foundation of the peace process, in my own analysis, is really disturbed, not just disturbed. In fact, it changed the arena of this peace process. And suddenly, people started looking, so what is this about, right? And so they started looking at all this, and they saw, okay? And then it's a question for me now whether we reopen the wounds of division, we reopen the biases of Muslim or anti, or we really haven't. Was there real, Because if you will listen to the language now, this is the pre-1987 Constitution language. It's not even pre-armed. It's pre-1987. When they look at the whole wealth sharing now, and they talk about all the 70 billion, you're not even sure whether that's true or not. But they look at that and say, all the other LGUs will also ask for that. So can you imagine the 1987 Constitution already recognized, okay, the special status for the Moro people in the Cordilleras. But now we're still talking about this. Our own leaders now talking about just comparing it with ordinary LGUs, right? And of course we say that is, they don't know the history of this and so the point I'm making here is that that we've kind of anchored this, okay? And I'm not saying this in a very negative sense, right? It was an opportunity. We have to push this. We're all peace advocates. And then we came up with a COB, which is a very beautiful document. Okay? As I was saying, the first COP op-ed I wrote about this after the FAB was that the title is Mixed Feelings in Rappler. I said, oh my God, all the advocacies that we've been pushing for many years are already in the FAB, and now in the COB also, and even in the BBL. Okay. But you see that the problem is really making people understand this, making people appreciate this. And the problem with very short, with a bullet train peace process, I'm just referring to the political side of it, right? Substantive, the implementation of the substantive aspects of it, meaning up to the BBL and the plebiscite, and the establishment of the Bangsamoro within the period of, maybe after the FAB and all that, so up to 2016. The problem with that is you explain it, and I think I make reference to what Ie was talking about, right? So there should be some sound bites, so sound bites to sell this, okay? And that's what anyway media wants, right? The sound bite. And then it came to a point where the sound bite is spoiler versus peacemaker versus war versus peace, And what else? Just so many, or arm as a failed experiment and all those. I don't know where that came from, but it created so much division on the ground again, you know. So how can you talk about continuing peace process if you say that the arm is a failed experiment? You know, it must be building on rather than, you know, building something out of a vacuum. That you cannot do. Okay, so it will be very, very divisive. But anyway, the point I'm making is there was really no opportunity to harness informed and principled acceptance of this. Okay, and that we have to accept, and we have to accept that, and you know, we don't blame. You know, we can't blame. And it was an opportunity. It was an opportunity. We have to take it. You know, because it's true when the president says that. You tell me if there's still an opportunity that we can reach this far. You know, and no one will. Because we don't know what the future would be. You know, so. But this president has all this political capital and he's investing in this. It just so happened that he's now, you know, he's now linked with the Mamasapano also. You know? So the perception is that the very guarantor of the peace process was the one who, I don't say subvert, but you know, not subvert, but maybe that's a very strong word. You know? But undermine. Okay, the peace infrastructure that he himself champions. Okay, so don't blame people when they lost trust on the guarantor, so they lost trust in the process also, right? But actually they haven't really trusted it because they accepted it, you know. So meaning they read it, because we did not have time to do this, right? We did not have time to let people understand this, you know. So that's why I agree with Iye that now it's all messaging again. You know, what do we do, right? What's the message that we should, you know, be telling people out there? So how do you deal with politicians? You know, you say, because it's their political interest, you have to understand that politicians just reflect, you know, what people are saying, right? They reflect what majority of the people, well, from their perception, are saying. Okay? So, you know, you don't dismiss politicians, demonize them as anti-peace, you know, when you're talking about this. And actually, I haven't really seen anyone talking about, well, at first, all-out war. But no leader was talking about all-out war. What they're talking about is that when we continue this trajectory, okay, there might be war again, you know. So you know, we have the message now is that we need to refine our understanding and deepen our analysis, and it's that. No, we took a gamble. In my opinion, we took the gambit, and you know, I don't say we lost, right? There's nothing as a loss. But when we're looking at how we move forward, we have to understand the context. Why Mamasapano? Okay, why the reaction? This huge reaction after Mamasapano, and we have to everybody must take responsibility for that. Okay, MILF, GPH, international community, CSOs, everybody must take responsibility for that, you know, rather than pointing. For me, Mamasapano is an occasion for soul searching. Okay, and then ask ourselves that question on, it's not what we've done wrong, but rather what have I contributed actually, because it's so fast, what happens is that I think, okay, the general culture is a culture of entitlement rather than responsibility and accountability. So it became a process of entitlement of people, even on the ground, you know. So you see, I've been all over the communities up to Sulu and all that. It's really people selling IDs for the political party, people selling IDs for the police and all that. But you know, people really don't understand, you know. So we need to, the point I'm making is, moving forward, we need to look at this whole the trajectory. I'm not saying to change the trajectory, but what I'm saying is that we need to refine, we need to deepen our analysis, and maybe really look at the details of this, you know, because for me, this framework, I can really defend it, you know, the CAB and the BBL, and you know, these are very, very good documents. right? These are very good documents. But you just don't go all out there and say that if you don't accept these documents, you're a war freak, okay? Or because people, you have to understand why people are saying these things, and you have to address those concerns. It just so happened that because we have very, very little time to do this, so, and that brings me to the last point of the track 1 and the track 2. Okay, so what IE and the MILF are doing with the track 1. So these are the formal negotiations. But I think we neglected the track 2, so especially when we look at this past at the bullet train, so because there's so much to know, to learn and to know, So for the track 2, it's important that the track 2 should be able to exact accountability also of the track 1. Okay? But in this process, I think the track 2 became like what they call it, an extension of track 1. So you see CSOs going all around, doing information campaign, coming from the track 1, because that's where the money is and all that. Because that's what's available, right? Doing all this. And then we say that that's consultation. We never really heard what people are saying on the ground. What we were doing was just, telling them about what the CAB and the PAB is, but even saying those really haven't really understood it that well, because we really haven't trained people to be explaining it, in a way that is, because the way people are explaining this also are jaded, it depends on where they're coming from. So in terms even just understanding the nuances of the agreement of the parties, that's something that needed to be brought out there in the open. Explaining the context of this particular provision. So that's why when because we've engaged in the sound bites, because we had no time, people will look at these sound bites also. So when they look at BBL, they only look at the asymmetric relations. You only look at all the symbols. These are actually symbols. You need that because this is a product of peace negotiations. But people will dwell on that also and would not have that opportunity to actually try to understand the meaning of this, how this is operationalized. This is not actually a substate, but when people look at it, asymmetric, Okay, so that's the level of the communication there. So my suggestion is we start for us engage in the track 2 because we're all to look at this and really ask the question on in terms of how do we move forward here, right? Now people are confused. What do we say? Do we say pass the BBL or war? Okay, you don't even know if you pass a BBL that is not acceptable to the MI, but will that necessarily lead to war? I don't know. Right? It's not as easy as BBL or war. Okay? So, and that's very limited also. The peace process is not just about the BBL. I said, you have all the other also demobilization, decommissioning, or transitional justice, which are not even in the BBL. And please take note that the GPH-MILF peace process is just one of the components in the whole Mindanao peace process also. Okay? Because the language that we use is when you say Mindanao peace process, we refer to this process with the MI. Okay? There's been peace process with the MNLF also, and there are people-to-people peace processes, there are peace-building activities, etc., etc. Right? And so the thing is, maybe we should be able to now go back and look at this maybe with a more I don't know what to call it, a critical eye, right? So that at the end of the day, it's really that we need to harness principles and inform acceptance of this framework and this comprehensive agreement on the Bangsamoro. So I'm sorry that you might be waiting for answers, very clear answers. What do we do? But this is just a kind of a context and a kind of a framework that I'm offering, or I'm telling you. I don't know if I know, then maybe there's no more, there's peace already in Mindanao. If anybody really knows that magic, bullet, and answer. So this is just some points of reflection. Maybe we can discuss that during our open forum. Thank you very much.
Father.